Hello everybody and welcome to Analysing Anfield. We are live on the Blood Red podcast and also, as you can see, if you're watching it on the YouTube channel. If you are listening to this on a podcast and you enjoy it, thank you very much for listening via podcast. If you do want to sort of see what we look like and why you would, I don't really know, but there you go. If you want to watch us, do all of our Analysing Anfield goodness, then you can go onto the Blood Red YouTube channel and take a look at that. But welcome, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, welcome to Analysing Anfield. I'm Kristian Walsh, and with me as always is Josh Williams. The Premier League season is up and running. Liverpool are already in the top four, Josh. They were top of the league for a little bit on Friday night as well, which was nice. I don't think anyone expected any difference. 4 goals, decent performance. In general, what did you reckon? Because I think if you listen to last week, we predicted it quite accurately.
I think we did. I think we. That's the first thing I've written on the agenda, really. I mean,
stop clock, yeah, right? Twice a day.
Yeah, I think we got a pretty spot on, to be honest. They were fairly free-flowing in the way they attacked. Youthful side, they got forward and things like this. Offensive fullbacks, and we predicted that the main things we had to look out for were Pugi's conversion rate set by yourself. I'm not too sure what it was last season. Can you remember what the conversion rate was?
I can't remember his conversion rate. I just know he was very good.
I feel like it was 22% for some reason. And I mentioned Buendia, who managed to get the assist, and he certainly showed up for me just throughout the game. I'm not sure if he did for you.
Yeah. He's clearly a good little player. Sounds so condescending, but he's got something about him, hasn't he? He's going to do well against a fair few teams this season.
Yeah, they're left winger as well. I thought had a good performance. I've not previously heard of him, if I'm honest. I think Tom Campbell, was he?
Yes, Campbell. Yeah,
he was really impressive for me. But yeah, I just thought it was a good performance. It was on its way to a cricket score, which we already said last week. 4-0 at half time it was. 4-2-3-1. So Norwich came as expected, really. And from a Liverpool perspective, that was ideal because we also mentioned that we are the worst possible opponents that they could face, really. So, there's different ways of looking at it, but I think from Norwich's perspective, I think they were a bit. You've got that fine line, haven't you? Admiral/naive. But good performance. But there was one or two, I'd say, defensive narratives following the game, wasn't he? Just regarding Liverpool's defence being a bit sloppy, maybe.
Yeah, we'll start with that. We'll talk a little bit about Salah and Origi and Liverpool on the front foot. We don't want to be negative. They won 4-1, and I don't think this necessarily will be negative. But there was a little bit of negativity around post-match because I think it was Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville. I think Neville might have even said that a better side than Norwich might have even got a point because they were given so many chances. Both of them reflected on what was a not the type of Liverpool defensive performance we've been used to seeing over the past 12 months, but ultimately, what was it? 11 shots they faced.
11 shots.
11 shots. Yeah. That's quite high. I think last year they were averaging around 5, 6, 7. Yeah, round about the 6, wasn't it? Round about the 6 shots a game mark.
Yeah, it's a bit uncharacteristic, I'd say, of Liverpool. The XG at Liverpool. I mean, there's various different models, we know this, but most add Liverpool around 2.2, whereas, and I think that's, do we have a penalty? We didn't have a penalty, did we? No. So, I'm getting mixed up. Norwich had valued at around 0.9 to 1.1 in that region, which,
feels quite high against the promoted side, yeah.
Yeah, for Anfield it is quite high. I had a little look. Last season at Anfield, in all competitions, we had a home average of 6.7 shots against. Norwich obviously managed 11. And only Spurs, Bournemouth and Chelsea in the Carabao Cup managed to have that amount at Anfield. So, it was a bit of a strange one, but I don't think the shots were particularly high quality. I don't think they were clear-cut chances that they had. I just think it was... we mentioned about Liverpool pre-season, what was the issue and stuff, and although it was lack of personnel, it was also a little bit of a lack of cohesion, lack of fitness maybe, compactness and things like that. So Yeah, I think it was a bit of that. Less so than in pre-season, but just a bit of that. Like that'll obviously bit of rust. I'd say that we'll have to get rid of with games. So it's not something I'd overly worry about. It's not something that I expect to continue, and it's something that I do think is partially due to Norwich's approach, because not many opposing teams are willing to let their fullbacks bomb on in a way that Norwich did.
Well, you've just mentioned Bournemouth, and Bournemouth traditionally end up getting snotted by Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, don't they, apart from the 4-3 that time, but they conceded a lot of goals against Liverpool, and again, ultimately Liverpool scored 4 and Norwich scored 1, so obviously it's a lot deeper than that, but it was a noble outlook from Norwich, but also one that ultimately cost them quite heavily.
I think it's usually a case of if you're going to cause Liverpool problems, if you're going to have genuine shots against Liverpool are probably going to have tons against you as well. Hence why we tend to demolish Bournemouth. We scored 4 against Norwich after 45 minutes. The Chelsea game was a bit of an anomaly because, obviously heavily rotated side. And the Spurs game, I'm not sure.
But that was just when finished. That was the 2-1. That's when they just had that half an hour. Yeah, that's when they had that spell.
Yeah, they had that half-hour period. Yeah. So yeah, as I say, I don't think it's something to be overly worried about. Something to keep an eye on. Little bit uncharacteristic of Liverpool, but I do think it massively coincides with players coming back, bit of a lack of cohesion, and we're one of the best in the world for that, being difficult to break through, having a real compact block and stuff like that. So I'd expect us to get back to that in the coming weeks.
So not too much to worry about defensively. Just want to point to one thing defensively, and then we'll start talking about the good stuff that Liverpool did, because they did score 4 goals and won, and they got the 3 points. But I've noticed a couple of times now, it happened against City at Wembley, it happened for the goal against Norwich. Liverpool seem to be trying to play this offside trap, and something somewhere isn't quite working because somebody's not moving out. Is this because of VAR? And because if you get it right, there's absolutely no, basically if you get it right, there is no debate. There is a video there to say you have got that right. So Klopp is maybe backing it, because it feels like we're playing the offside trap a lot more. Maybe I'm just noticing it more because of the VAR in the back of my mind. I just noticed, you think about the Sterling chance when they went through. You think about there was another opportunity for City, and obviously the goal against Norwich happened a couple of times in pre-season as well. I don't know if it's Gomez, I don't know if it's Alexander-Arnold. Is it something that you've noticed?
It's something that I've noticed. I have picked up on it. I haven't delved into it yet. I haven't been asked to assess it, to analyse it, nothing like that. So I couldn't give you any kind of insight on that. But it is something I have personally picked up on, yeah. Just a bit more of an aggressive line. A little bit higher up the field. I think Klopp has been questioned about it. And I think he denied it. I think he denied that there was any change at all, which you probably would do if it wasn't working particularly well. Even if it was working well, you probably wouldn't want to deny it.
No share your secrets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would be a clever change, I think, to be honest, because if you read tactical books and things like that about the history of football tactics and stuff like that, most little innovations come as a result of rule changes, updates in the law and things like that. So if we've made such an adjustment based on VAR now being a part of our game, for me that would make a degree of sense, and it'd be quite inventive if we have done that. Obviously though, if we're doing it, we need to get it right. So yeah, that's definitely worth keeping our eye on. I could even suggest that as an idea.
I reckon this week, yeah. Let's have a look at Chelsea, because this is getting recorded on Tuesday. Liverpool play Chelsea on Wednesday. There'll also be a game with Southampton between now and the time that we next record, so it might be worth keeping an eye on. It's just something. So. I don't know if it's Gomez, I don't know if it's Trent, I don't know what it is. I just know that also Van Dijk's getting pretty agitated at times about how they're stepping up, so it's one worth keeping in mind. Let's talk a little bit about Liverpool. They look sharp. We mentioned Salah after City. I thought his finish was excellent, and even if they weren't necessarily at the fluid best, I think you said it was around 2 goals on the XG. It looks like whereas last year it took them a while to click. Although, to be fair, they did win 4-0 on the opening day last season. It looks like they're pretty much picking up from where they started again.
Yeah, it was fairly solid performance with the ball. I think 16 shots, 7 on target. The attacking players looked on it. He looked more influential, I'd say, than the Community Shield. Obviously, Mane's only been out for 2 weeks, so he hasn't really got to come back and restart. He's still fit from the last season. So
the problem might come in March, April, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, I mean, we usually have a dip in January, don't we? So that would just keep the tradition, I suppose. But yeah, I think it was a decent opening performance. We looked threatening. There was a lot of people on my Twitter feed with a bit of an issue with the opening midfield that we selected. Half an hour later, St Alexander-Arnold put a cross on a sixpence. It was ridiculous, and that's why you don't need particularly creative central midfielders when you've got such technicians on the flanks. So yeah, just there wasn't much to immediately note in terms of like comparing our tactical approach to last season. Don't think there was much development to pick on. Just a very strong performance. Good going forward as we always are. Norwich played into our hands and just move forward and try to develop a bit more, because although that's the case, I think there was areas to improve, room for improvement there, definitely.
I think this is going to be a running theme with midfield selections, and I think we can say it now. We said it last week. That midfield's absolutely fine if 2 of your chief playmakers are on the field, and in Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson they are. Yeah,
and as long as them two are able to influence the play, which against Norwich they are. If you're playing a slightly more offensive opponent whereby Trent's staying deeper, Robertson's staying deeper, it's a bit different. But against Norwich, when I saw the team, I didn't anticipate any immediate problems, especially considering Norwich are willing to play through your team. And when you've got the likes of Henderson in your midfield, Fabinho in your midfield, even Wijnaldum, they're all fully willing to put a foot in. So even though I do think Norwich seem to get through certain instances a lot easier than I expected, but again, that just stems from compactness and things like that. So I'd expect improvement, but there's not a lot to be concerned about at the minute, although we did seem to allow a few more shots than usual, things like that.
It's got to be credit to Norwich as well, though, which is great for Liverpool, because if every team turns up against Liverpool with that sort of mentality, it's likely that Liverpool will do very well again this season. But credit to them, and you saw enough of them to think, maybe they might have enough about them to stay up.
Yeah. When we asked last week about who might get relegated, I was a little bit uncomfortable saying Norwich, because you ultimately don't know what you're going to expect, and they are a very capable attacking side, very brave. So if you've got goals at the bottom end of the field, at the bottom end of the league, you tend to do fairly well. I mean, you look at Bournemouth; they haven't been particularly good defensively for years, but they know how to attack. They are a good attacking side. They create clear-cut chances consistently. Whereas if you look at a team maybe in the form of Newcastle, you worry where their goals are going to come from and things like that. So, yeah, I think people maybe look at it as newly promoted side, 11 shots against you, not great. True, but this is all we know of Norwich at the minute. They could go on to have an average of over 11 shots per game. Yeah. We don't know. So they're a team that's worth keeping an eye on. And although you're inclined to look at Liverpool's defensive fragility, let's say, in terms of allowing on to have 11 shots, it can also stem from Norwich. So it's difficult to say at these early stages of the season. You don't know where teams are yet. But I was impressed with what I saw. I think if they continue like that, they'll get good results against most teams. It just happened to face Liverpool in the opening week.
The big talking point, as well as the game itself and the goals and the analysis around it, was the injury to Alisson Becker. It didn't look a good one initially. It looks like it might be a little bit better than first feared, with Klopp saying, I think he's intimating basically get him to the the international break and things should be okay. So I wouldn't imagine he goes away with Brazil. He was very keen not to put a timeline on it, but at the same time, I think it would have been a lot. If it was a lot worse, I think Klopp would have said it was a lot worse. So on comes Adrian. He's going to be Liverpool's goalkeeper for, let's say, the next month at least. So what do we know about him? Both on the field and off the field, and ultimately, how much of a blow is this to Liverpool, and how much of the breach can Adrian, there's going to be hard, Alisson, Adrian, how much can Adrian step into it?
It's a lot to cover there. I think firstly, on Alisson coming back, and when he's coming back and things, I think the word was very ambiguous, I thought, in terms of a few weeks. And I think the reason we've said that is because Alisson's never been injured as far as I'm aware. Certainly as far as Liverpool is aware. So we have no gauge at all on what his recovery time's like. Whereas with Joe Gomez, his recovery time's bad. There's a player, I can't even think who it is. We've got a player who comes back very quickly.
Lallana?
No, it's not Lallana. Who is he? We've got a player who tends to come back really quickly, quicker than usual. It might be Mane, actually.
Mane does feel like
it's Mane.
Mane. It was around the time of he got injured in the October of 17-18, I think.
Yeah.
And around then, and he was back far, far quicker than anyone anticipated.
So yeah, I just think that's. I'm not sure if I'd entirely believe the few weeks thing. It's better than obviously him sustaining some sort of Achilles problem, which was a bit of a bit of a rumour. But anyway, on Adrian, whatever you want to call it, not great.
Is your 2-word review there?
No, I think a lot of people have been trying to paint it positively, which is understandable, and there is stuff there to paint positively. He's big character by all accounts, which is what you want from a lad who's not going to play much. He's experienced in the league, cool, composed with his feet, stuff like that. But in terms of impacting results in a similar way to Alisson, I don't have a great deal of hope there. I looked at his past 4 seasons, and I just used XG just as it's difficult to judge goalkeepers ultimately, but I looked at his XG. So he was expected to concede 120 goals. He conceded 119. So not bad, not good, absolutely bang average. That's what that is really.
What you want from a number 2?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, XG is founded upon historical data based on what the average goalkeeper saves. And Adrian, obviously, is very much in that region. In 15-16, he overperformed by 4. A year later, he underperformed by 4. So, again, it's just, he looks very, very average to me. I think he's shown up to a couple of the likes of StatsBomb and people who have been in analytics for a while. He showed up quite well a couple of years ago.
I think it was 14-15.
Yeah, I think 5 years plus, things like that. He was quite good then, but I think he's just naturally declined a bit since, which is normal. And as you say, I think he's very much a number 2. Better number 2 in terms of shot stopping than Mignolet. I compare him to Mignolet. Mignolet, based on the past 5 seasons, below the average keeper. Underperformed every season in terms of what he was expected to save compared to what he actually did save. So he's not great on Mignolet. He's just nowhere near Alisson. And to put into perspective, Alisson, over the past roughly 5 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons, Alisson's been expected to concede 152. No, sorry. He's been expected to concede 180 in all competitions. He's conceded 152.
That's 28 goals.
That's a considerable overperformance, and that's over the course of about 19,000 minutes.
Sample size is big enough there to say this isn't the patch. This is him being an incredible goalkeeper.
That's enough to suggest that he's just an above average goalkeeper. he's just better than the average keeper in terms of what he can save. So I've spoken about Alisson before on this pod, and I think he's not necessarily crucial to our overall performance on the pitch. I think our performances will stay generally the same. What I think Alisson's crucial to is results for us. Just securing results by making big saves, having not done anything for 45 minutes. And I think the goal that we conceded, the Pukki goal, epitomised that really. The only real clear-cut chance you'd say that Norwich had, he scores it. I think Alisson saves that, personally.
I think he's off his line a lot quicker as well.
Yeah. So just, I don't think it's too detrimental, because, as I say, our performances should genuinely stay the same. We should generally still concede roughly around 8 shots a match, 7 shots, 6 shots a match. But it's just Alisson overperforms in terms of what he's expected to save. He saves shots that he shouldn't. Adrian saves shots he should. Shots that he shouldn't, they go in. So it's just the average keeper, really, in that regard. So, it remains to be seen. It's never the interesting one to keep an eye on, but I wouldn't be inclined to paint him in a positive light and think that we've got some hidden gem who's never really been discovered or something like that. I think he's just a very average keeper. Better than Mignolet, but worse than Alisson.
And that's what you want from a number 2, really, isn't it?
It is.
That's because they're not going to play every week.
I mean, he's very much been signed as number 2, yeah. He's very much been signed as number 2. It's not a case of where we've maybe recruited 2 top quality number 1s, say, for example, what you've got at Man United, maybe, or even City. Adrian was very much recruit him, he can play in the cups, the domestic cups. And, out of nowhere, Alisson gets a complete random injury. And he's now got to step up for us and play in some important games, so it's a concern purely in terms of results, yeah. Just because we should technically not be able to perform above average, which is what we've been doing for the past year, for the most part at least.
Do you think it'll change Liverpool's style at all again? Do you feel like they'll just go for the jugular, look to more of a 17-18 throwback for the next month where they just try and outscore opponents?
Possibly. I'd say more in the case of, I mean, when we got Alisson, we got him around the same time as Van Dijk, so it's hard to judge. But one key tactical change that seemed to happen around the time of getting Alisson was we were a lot more comfortable and we were a lot more happy to sit on leads. People that have picked up on our pressing numbers and things like that have noticed that our pressing has very slightly, we've been a lot less active in our pressing when we've got a lead and things like that, maybe. And that's just because we're a lot more inclined now, a lot more capable to soak pressure. And if we do concede a shot maybe from outside the box or whatever, a shot from a dodgy angle, we've got full trust in Alisson to be able to cope with that.
Well, he wasn't beaten from outside the area.
Exactly, he didn't get beaten from outside the area in the Premier League, yeah. Apart from certain Lionel Messi in the Champions League.
And Red Star Belgrade.
Yeah, that's true, yeah, Champions League.
That'll be a quiz question, that.
Yeah. But beforehand with Mignolet, this could again coincide with the fact we didn't have a very good defence either. But we pressed like monsters, and that was because we just wanted to keep opposing teams as far away from our goal as possible and defend using our attackers rather than using our actual defence, if you like. So I'm not sure. I don't think we'll deem it as much of an issue as that, whereby we'll go back to pressing like maniacs from the front to just avoid Adrian having to do anything. But it's, as I say, it's such early days in terms of the season. It's worth keeping an eye on these things, but I wouldn't expect anything drastic. It's just a case of making sure that Adrian doesn't have to deal with shots, really. I mean, yeah, I was going to say high quality shots, but he's coming across to me as an average keeper in terms of shot stopping. So just give him as little to deal with as possible and we'll be fine. But expecting him to perform over the norm based on his numbers, based on the past 4 seasons, looks unreasonable.
It'll be interesting, actually, his little experiments, I suppose, because it makes you realise, doesn't it, that in the space of 6 months, Liverpool brought in Virgil van Dijk, Fabinho and Alisson Becker. And if you want to go a little bit further than that, they also moved Joe Gomez into a centre-back role. So it'll be interesting to see whether this big defensive improvements, I don't know if we'll ever will find out. Is it down to individuals? Is it down to the shape? Is it down to the collective? Because it's one of those, you take Fabinho out, for example, we saw, I mean, it's a little bit different with Fabinho, I suppose, because it took him a while to get going, but you take out Van Dijk and what would happen? You take out Alisson, what would happen? Is it just that the mentality and the shape's different, or is it down to individuals? It's going to be really interesting to see now how it alters Liverpool, if at all. Now, one of those components of Liverpool's, let's say, it's that three-man spine of goalkeeper with centre-back and number 6. It's going to be interesting to see if take one of them out if something changes.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of all those things, really. I think we have developed, tactically, certainly for me, we've developed a capability to control what's going on around us, whereas in the past it's always been a bit chaotic for 90 minutes. And, I must say, Alisson, Adrian, he's not bad by any means. It's not like this. I've maybe painted him a bit too bad there. It's just a case of he's average. Just an average, very standard keeper in terms of shot stopping.
It's only bad because of how good Alisson is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've had and I get asked. We get asked quite a lot to talk about Alisson on this pod. He's just an above average keeper. He saves shots that he shouldn't. He is just better than the average keeper, and that has a massive impact on securing results, as I've said, because football's a low scoring game. You only need one goal to massively impact a season sometimes. And Alisson, if we do maybe let a clear-cut chance through or whatever it may be, Alisson steps up and really impacts results. I'm just thinking maybe, I've spoken with this in the past on this pod, the Merseyside derby, Anfield, Andre Gomez has a clear-cut chance from about 2 yards. I think Alisson saves it. Napoli, Champions League.
That's the one, isn't it? They're out the Champions League.
Yeah, big save against Milik.
Stamford Bridge
against Hazard, 1-0 down. Clear-cut chance. He makes the big save. So it's just little things like that. It's not your performance generally as a whole. It's just those big moments that impact results. And it's no coincidence for me in the past that we've performed to a solid level each season under Klopp. But for the first 2, certainly, we still managed to finish 4th. Whereas United, for example, in the second season, I think it was, finished 2nd with De Gea massively overperforming for Mourinho. Following season, we get Alisson in and we end up 2nd. And that season when United did finish 2nd with De Gea overperforming, we were the 2nd best team in the league according to XG, expected points and things like that. We just had Mignolet in goal, so I just think goalkeepers massively impact results above everything else. So yeah, it depends. We'll just have to really keep an eye on it. Hopefully keep Adrian to a minimum in terms of what he's expected to do, and get over the line really until Alisson's back.
No surprise as well that City have been dominant as well since Ederson came in. You compare that to Joe Hart, Claudio Bravo, all of those sorts of goalkeepers. Mentioned Chelsea there. We'll mention Chelsea now as well, because Liverpool are playing Chelsea in Istanbul in the UEFA Super Cup final. I don't know why we need to call it a final. It's just a Super Cup, isn't it? But there we go. The Champions League winners against the Europa League winners. Must admit, a little bit of a disappointment that it's against Chelsea. I always feel like the Super Cup, but the 2 I remember were CSK Moscow and Bayern Munich, and that's what a Super Cup should be about, is playing a different team from a different country. But here we go anyway. But on the field, Josh, we're coming at it. You can't really look at what happened last season because Chelsea had a different manager. Liverpool might have changed a little bit as well. We don't know. It's too early in the season to make any sort of judgments. What we can look at, though, is that 90 minutes that Chelsea had against Manchester United. They got hammered 4-0. Which side of the fence do you fall upon? Was this a fluke or was it deserved?
Both. This is a dodgy one, this. You asked me last week, which team do I think will get fourth? And I said Chelsea. The reason I said Chelsea was because they still have a really solid group of pros that are above the average player. Okay, they've lost Hazard, they replaced him with Pulisic. Could Lampard be that bad? You know, it remains to be seen, but I didn't suspect any massive drop off there. I thought they'd have enough over United and Arsenal to get fourth. Now I'm a lot less sure after looking into them deeper yesterday. It was a fluke. United didn't deserve the 4-0 win. But having looked back at Chelsea, they were really naive. And Lampard set his team up in a way that it didn't entirely suit the players at his disposal. It was very idealistic, and that's dangerous. It was very Sarri, Pep Guardiola idealistic, but the difference is those two are both world-class managers, and those two are both, for the most part, have had better players at their disposal than what Lampard had on the weekend.
I saw this with Lampard last season, and this is a very, very short sample size, but I remember watching Derby in one of their first games in the Championship under Lampard, and he had Richard Keogh trying to play out the back like Joel Matip.
Yeah.
And it was just straight away, and I think they got turned. I think they might be 4-1 by Leeds. I can't quite remember. They definitely, or maybe West Brom. I know they got turned over quite heavily at home, and you're watching it and you're just thinking, he's trying to basically, he thinks these players are as good as the players he played with.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
It's a very idealistic approach, I thought. I mean, initially they were very energetic, very in your face. They started well. And I really, really tried to not let the result shape the own narrative in my head. And it didn't, until I looked back at them. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't know, I think they had a major problem in two key areas. Number one, pressing, and number two, your build-up play. Firstly, in regard to pressing, in pre-season they posted a PPDA of 7.9.
PPDA means?
Passes per defensive action. So that's roughly how many passes you allow the opposition to have before you then look to regain the ball. So 7.9 is very, very low. That suggests Lampard seemed really, really active looking to regain the ball. I thought, I wrote a preview for the MEN for, you know, how United could approach Chelsea kind of thing, and I suggested in the piece, they had the PPDA of 7.9 in pre-season, but I think that will drop off because this is now a competitive game at Old Trafford against quality players that Manchester United have. It didn't drop off at all. It was, they finished the match with 7.5, so that's even lower. And obviously match scenario can come into that. They were obviously chasing the game for a long period, but still really, really, really aggressive pressing. And when you think of the players in the squad, I'm thinking Jorginho, Kovacic, Mount, Barkley, even Abraham, Pedro, Azpilicueta, Zuma, maybe Christensen. They're not particularly mobile. They're not particularly energetic. I mean, they are and they're not. I'm just talking about, like, if you compare it to a Liverpool team, a City team, just pace everywhere.
You look at them, you go, they press, they will get around the pitch. Yeah,
and looking back, it reminded me a little bit of the 6-0 Sarri suffered at the Etihad. Obviously, it wasn't as bad, but Sarri instructed a gang of aging players, let's say.
Higuain up front.
It was, yeah. It was Higuain up front, and he instructed a gang of aging players to high press Manchester City at the Etihad, and he just got torn to shreds. And this wasn't as bad as that. And I think generally box to box, Chelsea's, you know, excluding the penalty boxes, I think the general performance of United and Chelsea was not that, you know, fairly even. But I just think, looking back at it, Chelsea did a lot of really naive, silly, idealistic things. And if they don't incorporate some form of pragmatism into a match with Liverpool, if he goes into it with such an idealistic game again, it could be bad. Honestly, it could be bad. It could be a real baptism of fire, whereby it takes him to be humbled to such an extent that he then sits back and goes, okay, I've realised now that I need to learn from this kind of thing. And just on the building from the back, you're building from the back with Kurt Zouma, who just is not that type of player. The moment where early on, Kepa passed to him and Zouma squared it to Martial. Yeah. He had no awareness at all of what was around him apart from what was in front of him. No scanning at all, and just a big worry. I think it'll improve drastically with Rudiger and Kante, because they are more suited to the approach that Lampard wants to take. But with the players he used at Old Trafford, I just thought it was looking back, I just think it was a little bit of a suicidal approach, a bit naive like.
You look as well when you press high, and if a team can get around that press, you are in big trouble. And United had the players there in Martial, in Rashford. Who was on the right for them?
On the right, I'm not sure, maybe Lingard.
Lingard it was, yeah.
And he had Dan James at one point as well.
Dan James, that's pace.
Yeah.
That's guile.
And I looked at Chelsea's pre-season. You should never really judge pre-season too much, but in their past 4 matches now, Chelsea have conceded 4 against United, then 2, 3 and 3 versus Mönchengladbach, Salzburg and Reading. Again, they were high pressing in all of them, but and pressing is supposed to be a defensive mechanism to make it difficult for the opposing team, and I think for United it generally did, apart from 4 or 5 moments where they just got clear-cut chances, and that's the problem. They're conceding clear-cut chances because their pressing isn't, compact and foolproof for 90 minutes. Big spaces open up as a result that can really be exploited. And when you're playing against a team that have got the likes of Rashford, Martial, James, Lingard, really mobile players, it's just a bit... It's not realistic. It's not a realistic approach to take into a game like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea's aggressive approach really flustered the likes of Norwich, Bournemouth. But then when they come up against Liverpool, City, they get absolutely battered. Not necessarily between both boxes, but just the clear-cut chances they allow are just going to kill them, and they're not gonna be able to get results. So it's the difficult one to judge at the minute. But as I say, initially the narrative, I was thinking, now Chelsea aren't this bad. But then, as I said, looking back at it, it's just a bit more worrying than initially thought.
So worrying for Chelsea, but hopeful for Liverpool in terms of Wednesday night. Is it fair to say that Liverpool, as I think you've just basically said, they're one of the worst teams Chelsea could possibly be playing on the back of this 4-0? If he hasn't learned how to be pragmatic in the space of 3 days, which he probably hasn't. Yeah,
the only side I can think that could be worse to play is City. But Liverpool, in big matches, high-profile matches, Liverpool are very much about making you make mistakes, enforcing errors, really. And Chelsea, if Zouma plays again, he's going to be really, really targeted. You can just predict it now. So it's Liverpool are one of the best when it comes to using pressing as a means of creation. They were considerably more mobile than Chelsea, more aggressive. The whole pressing game is more instilled in their game by, in my opinion, the best pressing coach the game's seen in Jurgen Klopp. So, as you say, I think he really needs to grasp that a pragmatic approach is needed for this one-off fixture. Maybe Chelsea's pressing will improve as the season goes on, but for his first 2 games to be against 2 highly mobile attacks, highly mobile opponents, who, Liverpool are, you'd say Liverpool are a better counter-attacking team than United. So it's just a big worry for Chelsea. I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm talking like I'm a Chelsea fan here. from a Liverpool perspective, you should be licking your lips if Lampard doesn't learn in the space of 3 days. But, maybe with it being a final, he will do. You don't know, but I just think it could maybe go the route. I wrote a preview of this yesterday on the Echo, just a general preview of the final. And a match that just vaguely came to mind was Roma, when we beat them 5-2, was it? At Anfield. Roma just, again, what's the...
Di Francesco.
Di Francesco, yeah. He just came with his idealistic approach without considering the opponents at all. High line. And Liverpool just killed them. Liverpool just really, really exploited the high line. Constant balls over the top from Trent in the direction of Salah. And it was just crazy. So I think it's similar to Norwich in terms of it can be admirable to an extent, but there will come a point where it crosses the line and becomes a bit naive. And if he's going to take the same high pressing approach to Liverpool with Zuma in the back and an aging squad, it's just doesn't look sensible, really.
I think Azpilicueta could be an issue as well, because he's used to playing in a 3-man defence, either as a centre back or as a right wing back, and he's also used to playing in like a Sarri side, if you will, where it's all about control. Twice in the space of 90 seconds against Manchester United, he just looked like he didn't have the legs to get back. And I think whether it's Mane or Origi, whoever it is down that side, it's going to be very interesting to see if he does get forwards, if he can keep up with them, because I really don't think he can. It feels like a real opportunity that for Liverpool.
Yeah, well, I think Azpilicueta and Zuma are both low block type defenders. I think they're both defenders that prefer the space to be ahead of them rather than behind them. And as you know, clearly they're being tasked with playing in this proactive, modern, assertive manner, which most weeks throughout the season probably will be okay. I just think in the big matches, you're going to really, really struggle.
And that will define how Chelsea do this season.
Yeah, I mean,
not even against necessarily Chelsea and Liverpool, Manchester City, Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, even Wolves, Everton, West Ham maybe, I don't know, but let's say Wolves and Everton as well, Leicester. Yeah,
I just think, as I say, looking back, my main take from it is that initially I just thought Chelsea were unlucky. It wasn't a 4-0, but the fact that they conceded clear-cut chances was no fluke, really. I think it was self-inflicted because of Lampard's lack of pragmatism, just lack of streetwise, thinking, that kind of stuff. And maybe that'll change because he's in the final. Maybe that'll change because he's more fearful of Liverpool than he was of United. It remains to be seen. And last season, when we were going into the game with Chelsea and Sarri was in charge, I had a vaguely similar view, because I thought Sarri was equally as idealistic in his views. But Chelsea really adjusted for the Liverpool match. Chelsea really got us on the break, I thought, mainly. So maybe Lampard will do the same. Maybe he'll accept, okay, we are the weaker team today. We are the weaker pressers in most areas with the weaker side, so accept it. But if he doesn't and he tries to, all guns blazing and things like that, I just really don't think it's a sensible approach against Liverpool. And I feel like, based on a short managerial tenure, there's a legit possibility that he might go with his principles again. I just think it might be very crazy. It might be a crazy match.
It's just worth reminding people, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, or you just can't remember, because we are very much well into this now. At Derby last season, they might have finished in the playoffs, but they were not. It was not the underlying performance of a playoff side. They conceded a lot of shots, and they scored a lot of goals that they shouldn't have scored. Mainly because of Harry Wilson.
Yeah, they scored plenty from outside the box. Benefited from a lot of variance, and if you're looking at strictly underlying numbers, the general chances they created were poor on the whole. And
third worst, I think, in XG.
It might have been the third worst, yeah. And defensively, I think they were lurking around mid-table, I think, or something like that. So yeah, it's a really interesting case to watch them this season. And as I say, I'm a bit more fearful for them after analysing the United game a bit more thoroughly.
Good news for Liverpool, though. They've flown out to Istanbul. They've taken a 23-man squad. One of the men who is not in that squad is Dejan Lovren, due to illness. We can do that. We can do that now on video.
Yeah,
illness.
We can, yeah.
No, the illness. Being serious, the club say he's ill. We'll assume that he is ill. But people will naturally talk because, it looks like he might be heading out anyway. With Roma and AC Milan interested in the services for £15 million. So I wrote about this for Liverpool.com a couple of days ago. It's weird that it feels like he's about to be sold at the time when his stock's probably at its highest. At Liverpool, you'll hear a lot of fans on social media at the moment, and I can certainly understand where they're coming from, saying under no circumstance can Liverpool sell Dejan Lovren. Didn't think we'd be saying that about 3 years ago, but here we are. Simple question to start, Josh. Should they sell him?
There's two ways looking at this one, isn't he? I think for me, I'm not overly fussed on a sale at all. I think it's fine. And that's from a recruitment perspective. I'm viewing it as 30 years old, quite injury prone, big wage, and I think his output is replaceable based on last season. Last season he only played 1,260 minutes, around that. That's about 14 full matches. One of them was in the Carabao Cup, which we don't have much care for, I think. And I think if he was to play, I don't know. I think the word is that we have sufficient cover in Fabinho, whoever, and Van den Berg, which I think that's a fair shout. I think if we've got 10 of our regular 11 on the pitch, and you put whoever as a centre back, or you put Van den Berg in next to Van Dijk, whatever, I don't think you'll feel that much at all, providing you do it in the right matches and things like that. There's a bit of risk there, just because there's a word that Matip and Gomez are injury prone as well, which is a fair shout. But will Gomez get such a knock as he did last season?
Gomez doesn't get niggly injuries. He's just been unfortunate, and his recovery time is a little bit of an issue, maybe because we've seen him sort of take over 12 months with an ACL. We've seen him, but that's just the way it is. But his injuries have been a broken leg and an ACL.
Yeah, the impact injuries. With
Matip, it felt like apart from the separated shoulder, which was it was in the last kick of the game against Napoli, wasn't it? Again, a pure and utter fluke. He seemed to be okay last season. If anything, the injury prone one out of the four is Dejan Lovren.
Yeah, and what I'm getting at as well, even with Gomez picking up that injury last season, and even with Matip suffering here and there, Lovren still only played 1,200 minutes. So it's likely that whoever is I'm not a biggest advocate of the whole fourth choice thing, but even if our fourth choice was to play that amount of minutes, that's not a great deal, and that's not worth.
You've been unlucky with injuries, I think.
Yeah,
if you see what I mean. I think you've been which I think Liverpool probably were at some point. You've been unfortunate if your fourth choice defender has played over 1,000 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I think I'd expect Gomez to play a bit more. I'd expect Matip to play a bit more, and then before you know it, this fourth choice slot by Fabinho or whoever or Van den Berg has to play, in the region of 500, 600, 700 minutes really, and it's not going to be felt that much, I don't think. Just considering the fee we're getting for Lovren, 15 to 20 million in the region of, we're obviously getting his wage off the bill. I just think from a recruitment perspective, it makes a degree of sense to cash in on him, especially considering he's now into his final two. So
basically, yes, he's got 2 years left, so next year will be his last year.
Yeah. I mean, the other side is that he's experienced, Premier League experience as well. His influence on Salah, whenever he does come in, he performs to a relatively consistent level. But I don't think that will massively differentiate when you throw Sepp van den Berg in there, for example, because I think when you throw a kid in, the worry is that he's going to make an occasional mistake that's going to cost you. What's Dejan Lovren renowned for?
Yeah,
an occasional mistake.
Certainly up until since Tottenham 4-1, he's actually not made one, but it's been greatly reduced. Before that, I think it was six headers leading to a goal at Liverpool in 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think he's prone to making an occasional one anyway.
Definitely.
And I think, considering his age, the offer we've got for him, if it's to be believed, and the fact he's on a big wage, injury prone, things like that, I think it makes sense to allow those errors to fall to the feet of a kid, let him develop from it. I've always had the belief that your fourth choice centre back, or I still hate saying it, but if your fourth choice centre back, let it be a kid who's got the room to develop, going to become a big player eventually. Let him learn in a relatively comfortable environment when he's perhaps next to Van Dijk against Sheffield United, maybe. So yeah, I haven't got much of an issue with Lovren being sold. I think it's the right time to cash in. I think we've got sufficient backups there, sufficient cover, and yeah, I think it makes a degree of sense to me.
Just looking there, that's what I was on my laptop for. Kyrgios, who for me is the ultimate fourth choice centre back. In 2010-11, he played 1,079 minutes, but that was very much in a season where I think Agger was missed a fair bit. I think Skrtel was out for a while. I don't think Carragher played the full season, and of course you had the change of manager. And I'm just looking at when Kenny came in, which would have been the Blackpool game. He made 5 appearances. So those are the type of numbers that you get. And I know, God, this is nearly a decade ago, but Kyrgios to me, always, you say like fourth choice centre back, my head goes to Kyrgios 2010-11. So it's probably, if you looked at the Benitez season, it'd probably be even less. So yeah, it's. I can see why people are frustrated. I think what also people should remember, and I'm not saying this is necessarily FSG's policy, but Wijnaldum has 2 years left on his contract. Matip has 1 year left on his contract. You would imagine both of those, barring any real strange situation, need to have extensions soon, and they deserve pay rises. They are champions of Europe after all. So this is the kind of thing you can't just... Yeah, you can't just magic up wages. You've got to, and okay, they've lost a fair bit from Sturridge, but then they've given Trent, Mane, Firmino, whoever, they've been given those pay rises. So it's about not balancing the books, but you do have to balance the books with FFP. Yeah,
it's just an economic, efficient way of doing things, and Liverpool are where they are at the minute because of how efficient they've been in the past couple of seasons. Zero wastage in regard to the squad, and I think Lovren alongside maybe Lallana, they're two, I'd say, squad issues whereby they're the only 2 players I think that are offering a bit of wastage in terms of you're not really getting your money's worth out of them. They're both on over 100k, I think. Both injury prone, both playing roughly 1,000 minutes or less a season. So I think just considering there's an offer for Lovren, and you've got 2 really big prospects, centre-backs there behind them, I just think it makes sense to let them share the slot rather than allowing Lovren to have it. I think there's a definite argument there for doing it, because there's a risk being taken, but I just think it makes sense. I think it's a sensible move, and you got to put your trust in the club in these moments as well, considering the business we've done over the past couple of years.
Move on to Southampton. If anyone just saw me look towards the window, it was Dave Prentice playing silly buggers. Sadly not on camera. So we'll move on to the Southampton game. obviously we can't go too much into it. We don't know what's going to happen against Chelsea first and foremost, but we can look at like Southampton and the fact that they got a bit of a shellacking against Burnley. 3-0 at Turf Moor, but I suppose I'll combine this with Oriol Romelu's been doing a bit of a press call and had a message for Liverpool, if you will, their midfielder, and he said there will be more chances to score against Liverpool. It's easier to play teams who take more risks and play out. And this sort of fits into Ralph Hasenhüttl, the Southampton manager. This fits into his philosophy, doesn't it? The way he plays, because the way he plays, you play a team against a team like Burnley who are long ball, and they bypass everything that Southampton do well. If you're Liverpool, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, he's very much a Klopp in that regard. He relies a lot on his pressing to create. That's certainly against bigger teams, stronger teams. His primary source of creation is just to press the opposing team into a mistake, and you obviously can't do that against Burnley. So the match was dire. But this is a quick lesson on you shouldn't be led by the actual results, because there was nothing in it. It was 0.97 xG for Southampton, I think. 0.75 xG for Burnley.
Burnley have got this weird voodoo. They do it every year. I don't know how they do it.
Witchcraft.
It's incredible. It's if you look at XG, how they underperform. Sorry, they overperform so much. It's remarkable. They win games 4-0 and should have scored about half a goal. It's incredible. Yeah,
11 shots to 10. So there was one shot in the game difference. Burnley managed to score 3 of them. And Hasenhüttl had alter his team's approach to the game, simply because, like Liverpool, when we play Burnley, we're well aware that you can't really. There's no point in pressing them. You're not going to get anything out of it. So rather than pressing them, you're best keeping your shape, rather than all charging forward, leaving your centre backs exposed to a direct long ball and getting done. So
centre ball, it's second balls, isn't it?
Yeah,
against Burnley.
Yeah. So Southampton played 81 long passes. That's more than any other Premier League match that they've played in at least the past year. I didn't think it was worth going any further back, but it's just a bit of insight into Southampton don't play long passes to that extent. Because it was Burnley, they did. So I think Romeo's got a spot on, really. I think he's comes across a bit arrogant, doesn't it? But
I think he actually said we've got a better chance of beating Liverpool than we did Burnley, which
is
feels like something that you just pin on a dressing room wall, isn't it?
Yeah, extraordinary comment. But it just stems from the fact that Liverpool will give them more pressing opportunities. So I think it's very, very much going to be like the last time we met. Was it 3-1, 2-1?
The 3-1. It was the Salah.
Yeah, Salah. But in the early stages of the match, we got it really wrong, I thought. We were caught, we talked about it on the show, we were caught constantly with 7 players ahead of the ball. And I think Jose Mourinho made a very good comment on Super Sunday during his little, his analysis post-match. He said you have to compensate and be aware of what your situation is and what your shape is if the ball is lost. As soon as you lose that ball, you have to be aware of what's around you and whether you're actually set up to cope. And Liverpool against Southampton last season, certainly the first time, weren't. And we got countered consistently, really easily. Didn't suffer too much from it. And I hope we don't do that again. We'll have to learn from that.
It's happened a bit in pre-season and a little bit against Norwich.
Yeah, it did.
It feels like we've had too many players ahead of the ball.
Too many players ahead of the ball, yeah. So it's something we definitely have to be wary of. The obvious threats are just don't make mistakes on the ball near your own goal. Don't allow the opposing team to counter-attack. And other than that, I can't really envisage much direct creation coming from Southampton in open play. That's captured against Burnley. Less than 0.97 xG over 90 minutes isn't great. So it'll be an interesting match, but hopefully we'll have learned from our past meeting with them.
this a game, bearing in mind what you just said there, is this a game for Naby Keita? Because you might want to get so many players ahead of the ball, therefore you'll want Trent and Robertson to be a little bit more withdrawn, and therefore you need that little bit of extra drive from midfield with an Oxlade-Chamberlain or a Keita.
It could be a case of that, but it also could be a case of considering the opposing team are willing to press you, make you really uneasy on the ball. You want players who can handle that. Naby Keita is really, press resistant is the word that we use for it. You can't really force him into a mistake. Very composed, good at dribbling, things like that, good at using his body. Wijnaldum's another, Fabinho's another to a slightly lesser extent. So I think the likes of Henderson and Milner, although they changed the game last time, it's worth noting, I think they're less suited to escaping pressure on their own and things like that and remaining composed under the press.
He's a bit of a Houdini case, isn't he? He can get out of it.
Yeah, he's very modern in that regard, Central midfielder who can cope with pressure. So perhaps he's a shout to be included. I just think he's more suited to coping with the opposition and their strengths than the midfield, than Henderson in particular, and Milner and players in that ilk.
I mean, how much of a test is this for Liverpool to early on? It feels like it's a bit of a, I hate to use such a cliche, but it feels like it's a little bit of a banana skin, a little bit like the Palace game last season, where you're looking at it and you go, this is going to be an early test of Liverpool's title aspirations and their credentials. But ultimately, they bypassed that quite well. They got through the Palace game. Do you envision something similar? A little bit of a struggle maybe, and then quality tells?
Yeah, well, certainly considering the other match that's getting played at 5:30, because City have got Spurs, so this is a big day, really. I mean, although it's two matches in.
Game week 2.
Yeah, game week 2, yeah. Game week 2.
It's remarkable, isn't it? But it is. It's
considering
like
you're up against an opponent that accumulates 100 points consistently. If they drop even 2 points and draw to Spurs, that is a massive moment. You have to take advantage of that immediately. So, considering we've got Southampton, an opponent that should be beatable, really, from our perspectives, you have got to take advantage of that. Looking at the way we performed against Norwich and the openings we did allow them, Southampton have got a bit more quality about them, so you'd want to be a bit more compact, a bit more assured than we was against Norwich. But hopefully we've got enough to take advantage of the fact that City have got a tough game. And I don't know, it's a difficult one to predict, just because it's so early in the season. You don't know what changes are being imposed. But Southampton are a tricky opponent for us, yeah. It's definitely worth noting, just because we don't look particularly foolproof at the minute. And I think Southampton are a team that are really, really focused on exploiting things like that. That's what they're all about, especially under Hasenhüttl. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
Danny Ings can play, of course. Just looking at the team there who actually played against Burnley. It looks like it's going to be a 3 at the back. That's how they like to play under Hasenhüttl, isn't it? It's Bednarek, Stevens and Vestergaard, with Valerie and Bertrand out wide, Ward-Prowse and Romeo, and then Ings, Redmond and Adams are sort of a front three.
They're considerably mobile, really, aren't they, that front three? It's reasonable to suggest that they'll stay fairly high. So we've got to compensate for that. The main threat, without doubt, will be on the break and when we're playing about around the back, that kind of thing. So just got to be really wary of things like that. But Klopp, considering what he's like, his style of play since day one, he should be fully aware of what Hasenhüttl's trying to do.
He's the Alpine Klopp, as he hates to be called. But
exactly. But Klopp should have a really good idea of what not to do, really, because he'll know his own triggers based on his past moves. So we should be highly equipped in terms of know-how of how to deal with this kind of thing.
I think also as well from that game in April, that was one of the tensest games I can ever remember.
Yeah, it was,
in terms of everyone's heads were going after 10 minutes, and when Shane Long who scored, wasn't it? And it was just, that was I can't remember, the timeline is a bit, I think it was Tottenham and then Southampton. And and there might have been like a Porto game in the middle of that, but in terms of the league, there was Tottenham and then there was Southampton, and those were the two games where it was just like, oh my God, Liverpool are in a title race and this is going to be absolutely excruciating for the next however many weeks. It was almost like when the penny dropped and it was like, right, okay, there is no margin for error anymore because Man City aren't going away, they're not losing, and Liverpool can't afford to lose. I don't know if we're at that stage at the moment. It feels like we already are because Man City have just won 5-0 at the London Stadium, but
I think it's positive that we're playing before City in that regard. Otherwise, that would make it a bit tenser. If we saw City drop points, maybe, and we recognise that as an opportunity to capitalise, maybe there would be a bit more pressure on our shoulders and stuff like that. But hopefully, we do play with a degree of freedom, because Southampton certainly will, because there's no real expectation on their shoulders.
It's ridiculous. The kids haven't gone back to school yet, and we're talking about pressure, and football's meant to be fun. And it just isn't. It just isn't. You're looking at the fixture list and you're going, right, City could maybe drop a point there and drop a point there.
No, they're a horrible team.
They are, and to be honest, I didn't see anything to stop me from thinking that they'll probably win the league by about 6 or 7 this year. But you never know. We talked about Ederson, maybe as a dip in form. Or an injury, and we don't hope that happens, of course, but you just never know, do you? So you never know what's going to happen with Liverpool. Usually they win nowadays, certainly in the Premier League, but we will wait and see what this 2019-20 incarnation of Liverpool do. So we'll look towards the Chelsea game, we'll look towards the Southampton game. We'll be back next week. We'll also at some point towards the end of this week be recording our first ever Analysing Anfield Extra Time, so keep an eye on the YouTube page for that. It's the Blood Red YouTube page, and make sure if you are listening to this as a podcast that you subscribe and download all of our Blood Red podcasts. It's not just Analysing Anfield, we've got the regular Blood Red show as well as many more. So thanks very much to Josh for this week, for joining me. We'll be back next week when we'll be looking towards the Arsenal game, and that'll be very, very interesting. I'm sure Nicolas Pepe might come up in conversation. Until then, here's to hopefully Liverpool lifting a European trophy and having a very good weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next week.